Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's a motto thousands of people live by each day. But what if I told you that using metal straws, composting your food waste, and driving electric cars wasn't making the positive impact on the environment that you thought it was? Now, don't get me wrong, this stuff is important, but the big businesses who make the products you buy are a bigger part of the problem, significantly. From cutting down rainforests to burning fossil fuels, or using harmful chemicals at their factories, there aren't enough straws in the world to compensate for that kind of damage. Take a look at this. In 2018, the Environmental Protection Agency calculated greenhouse gas emissions. 28% of the US's emissions came from transportation. The car in your garage contributes to that. But think bigger. The planes, trucks, and ships that deliver things. All of those run on fossil fuels. Electricity and industry were the other two largest emitters. Only 12% of greenhouse gas emissions were residential or commercial. That came from heating your home or getting rid of waste. The emissions from mass transportation and production heavily outweigh whatever it is you're doing at home. And that means it's going to take a lot more than just you and me to help save our planet.
When you think about the scale of that challenge and all that it requires, rebuilding the entire electricity grid, getting every fossil fuel driven car off the road. So we have to change all of these things. And when you understand just how big that transformation is, just how much it requires of us, it makes you realize just how trivial it is to see a plastic product being marketed as being produced by recycled plastic or whatever.
I get it. It's not trivial to you or me. And it's okay to want big business to clean up its act while also doing our part. Now, I know what you're gonna say, Jalyn, I buy green, sustainable, eco-friendly products. It says so right on the label. Yeah, it says that, but doesn't mean it.
Greenwashing is when you have an overstated and maybe a totally fraudulent claim being made on behalf of a product or service so that people feel like they're doing good for the environment when in fact they're contributing to, a further buildup of emissions and a further degradation of the planet and our future.
David Wallace Wells is the author of this book, The Uninhabitable Earth. In it, he breaks down the severity of global warming and how it could influence things like food shortages, climate wars, and economic devastation. That's where greenwashing comes in.
I think a lot of people still want to do something, and companies who are trying to sell them a product that sounds or is marketed as more climate friendly, walk right into that gap and take advantage of it.
As more consumers are becoming more aware that sustainability is important and trying to really shop in an eco-conscious way, it's sort of a way for companies to stay relevant without actually doing the work of improving their product.
In a 2017 global survey, Nielsen found that 81% of respondents feel strongly that companies should help improve the environment. Millennials, Gen Z, and Gen X were the most supportive compared to older generations. So the interest from buyers for greener products is there, but it's hard to prove if the products and companies that claim to be green are really just that.
If you're purchasing a product specifically because you're interested in reducing your own environmental impact, and that product doesn't have the attributes that you're looking for, that you believe it has, you might inadvertently be creating more of the problem that you're actually trying to avoid.
Back in 2007, Catherine Sheehy's colleagues at UL studied environmental claims made on products in big box stores. From that study and others, the team created a list to make it easy for people to recognize products with misleading environmental claims. That list is called the 7 Sins of Greenwashing. Now wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let's take a look at greenwashing in action. You've probably heard about this one, the Volkswagen emissions cheating scandal. In 2015, the EPA found that Volkswagen had manufactured and sold over 11 million clean diesel cars with engine software that changed the car's performance. The engine cheated carbon dioxide and nitrogen dioxide emissions testing, which means those engines weren't as good for the environment as customers thought they were.
To the best of your knowledge, did VW install this software for the express purpose of defeating emissions controls?
To our understanding, and this is also part of the investigation, it was installed to this purpose, yes.
Volkswagen of America CEO Michael Horn ended up leaving the company a few months later. Several people filed lawsuits, and in 2017, the Federal Trade Commission ordered Volkswagen to refund customers more than $11 billion to settle allegations.
There's a lot that the company is now supposed to do as a result of that. But I imagine that some people on that next green purchase had a little bit of skepticism. I mean, greenwashing basically hurts both consumers and the businesses that are trying to do the right thing.
By now, you're probably wondering if there's an agency that looks into things like this. You know, one dedicated to making sure that a company's advertising claims are true. Well, that's where people like Laura come in.
I'm Laura Brett. I'm Vice President of the National Advertising Division of BBB National Programs. We review advertising claims for truth and transparency. We just want to make sure that consumers are getting the environmental benefit that they think they're getting when they buy that product. And so we evaluate the way companies support those environmental claims, and we'll look at what they've done, what proof there is that their ingredients are less harmful for the environment, or that competing ingredients that they don't have in their product are harmful for the environment. And we want to make sure that those messages, if those are the messages consumers are getting, that those messages are supported.
After looking into a company's product, the NAD recommends better ways to advertise it, ways that make sure consumers aren't misled. 90 to 95% of companies come through the process and they agree to voluntarily participate and comply with our recommendations. We do hope that businesses that want to play by the rules will avail themselves of self-regulation as a way to raise the bar and make sure that consumers are getting truthful and not misleading information. Thanks to agencies like the NAD, it's becoming a lot easier to verify a company's green claims. But there are ways you can detect possible greenwashing on your own too. Remember those sins I was talking about earlier? The first is the sin of hidden trade-off, claiming something as green based on a narrow definition that ignores other environmental impacts.
This sort of goes back to the cradle to grave concept, but just thinking about who made your product.
Then there's the sin of no proof, claims that are not easily confirmed or aren't verified by third-party certifications. Next is the sin of vagueness, which includes broad claims that are likely to be misunderstood by everyday people.
Eco-friendly, conscious, or green, just without qualification. And that without qualification is really key, because you can use some of that language as long as you're telling consumers, as long as you're sharing information about what that means and what the evidence for that claim is.
The sin of worshiping false labels is a product that gives the impression of a third-party endorsement when one doesn't exist. And the sin of irrelevance is where a claim may be truthful, but unrelated to the product or company.
If you're buying a candle, for example, if the company is like, our wicks are lead-free. Well, that's like mandated by law now that new candles can't have lead wicks. So, a bit of a red flag.
The lesser of two evils sin is a claim that may be true, but distracts people from a larger environmental threat. And the last is the sin of fibbing, claims that are just downright untrue. I know that was a lot to take in, but don't be discouraged, because there's some good that comes out of this too.
Obviously, greenwashing is not a good thing, but I think the fact that it exists, it shows that companies know that they need to at least pretend to be sustainable in order to be relevant with consumers these days. And now it's really just sort of, being vocal and holding companies accountable so they can take steps that are actually getting them in the right direction.
There is all of this energy and pressure around operating in a more green or responsible way. And I think it does portend a better future on all of these metrics. Corporations are today feeling obligated to present themselves as responsible stewards of the climate. That really was unthinkable as recently as 5 years or 10 years ago.
Because there's power in our dollars, and if companies stop making green, they may actually try to be it.